So let me tell you about a really special moment in uh, in my journey of youth ministry. So I had told you guys yesterday. Welcome, welcome, everybody. Come on in. Um, I had told you yesterday about kind of my journey, a little bit of a Sparks Notes version, how I got into youth ministry. Um, I'll give a little bit more definition here. So, like I said, I grew up as a pastor's kid at my church, Rock Church in Halifax, Nova Scotia. My dad was the lead pastor there from 2009 to 2018. And then before that, he was the right hand man to our founding pastor. And so, grew up as a pastor's kid, always felt called to ministry. I went into Bible college as soon as I graduated from high school, and just had this sense that God was calling me into ministry. But the way that it kind of started, my youth pastor, resigned towards the end of my senior year in high school. And there was this like summer season before the fall where we didn't have a youth pastor. What they ended up doing was they called upon our founding youth pastor, Pastor Bruce Belair. He started our youth ministry in '84. They ended up inviting him to come on staff as an interim, but he didn't start until the September. And Pastor Mike, my youth pastor, he resigned at the end of June. So there was like this 2-month window where we were kind of just running events and just kind of doing stuff. And so I wanted to be a pastor, so I just stepped in. That was the beginning of my sort of volunteer experience as a youth pastor. And I'll never forget, this is one of the most exciting moments in my like youth pastor journey. It's when I got the username and the password to the youth account. Anybody? It changes everything. Does anybody remember the moment where you got the username and the password to the Twitter was bigger back then, so we had like a Twitter account, we had the Instagram account. Like it was like they were giving me the keys to the kingdom, man. Like I was like, oh, let's go. Um, Most of you are probably too young to remember this app, but the app that we used for everything that we would post was called WordSwag. Does anybody remember that app? Such a bad app now when I look back on it, but it was like one of the first apps that got pretty big, and it was essentially like graphic design in your hand. And it's so funny because I remember just getting into, posting graphics, promoting our events, and sort of spreading the word on Instagram. And I thought that like the designs and the fonts and the colors and the different templates, I thought they were so cool. They were so amazing back then as an 18-year-old. And what's terrible is that we have not archived any of our posts. That's one thing that I don't get about Gen Z, right? Like, have you guys like ever scratched your head at why like they don't post anything? And like every time they post on Instagram, they end up archiving it and deleting it. And you go on their page and there's like 3 posts at the top. I'm like, I have like 1,000 posts on my Instagram. Anyway, it's just like a head scratcher that I have with Gen Z. But anyway, you could scroll back, I swear, on our youth page, like I guess it'd be like 6 or 7, maybe 8 years. And you would probably laugh at the posts that I was posting. They were so bad, so cringy, terrible text, terrible design, so awful. And yet somehow, what's crazy is, even though I look back at like what my experience was, what I used to do like 6, 7, 8 years ago when I first started, and this isn't a brag, this is just part of my story. Somehow, over the last 6, 7, 8 years, without any professional graphic design experience, without any professional photography experience, without any professional videography experience or editing experience, or really much experience with much like Photoshop or Adobe or like any of the editing softwares, this past year, I oversaw the social media team at like the largest Christian conference in Atlantic Canada. It's called One Conference. And if you want to check it out, you can go on Instagram, just type in one_con1. And I'm really proud of it. Like, honestly, like we had some pop in social media over this past year. And as I was preparing for this set, I'm thinking like, man, how did this happen? Because even to this day, I'm not good at graphic design. Like I use Canva, you know what I mean? Like where are my Canva lovers out there, you know? Like we have a creative director at the church and he uses Photoshop and Adobe and all of like the actual professional stuff. Like I haven't even graduated to Photoshop yet. I still use Canva and I don't have any pro experience in any of like the traditional creative stuff, but somehow I find myself in a stadium with an event like of 3,000 plus kids this past May, and I'm the one running point on video, on photography, on all of this stuff. And I'm thinking, God, how did this happen? I'm going to tell you how it happened. It happened by just jumping in and just learning as I went. And so I tell you that story to say, like, I feel like there's a narrative that we can tell ourselves. Some of you might be in this room and you might love social media. You're really passionate about it. You're like, yeah, like, let's go. This is like a great vehicle to get the word out. I run into a lot of youth pastors who they just are like, I hate social media. Like, I don't want to get into it. Like, I don't understand it. And we adopt this narrative and this mindset, like, nah, I don't want to be the social media guy. One of the things I really want to try to challenge you with is to try to reject that mindset. If you have a mindset where you're like, I don't know enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not into it, I don't like it, I really want to challenge you to try to just like take that mindset and chuck it, because we are living in the greatest communication shift in the last 500 years, and it's a massive opportunity for the church to share the gospel, to build the church, to spread the kingdom. And so like that mindset that says, well, I don't really know what I'm doing, I'm not into graphic design, I'm not into video, I'm not into photography, nobody ever trained me, and so I just, I'm not really passionate about it, actually has the potential to limit a massive door that our culture through technology has presented us with to take advantage for ministry growth. And you don't want to have a limiting mindset around social media in these days if you're a youth pastor. You've got to have the kind of mindset where it's like, I might be an amateur, but I'm going to jump into this and I'm going to learn. I am going to try to figure this out. Here's why social media matters, okay? It is the front door of your ministry now. It is the front door. I remember people used to even say, like, your website is the front door of your ministry, and maybe for a certain generation, but it's not even the church website anymore. It's your social media page. For our young adult ministry, our youth ministry, like the front door of our ministry is social media. And I can guarantee you, unless they're, maybe they come from like more of like a sheltered family where they have, certain convictions about technology, the majority of the kids who are coming into our youth ministry, our young adults ministry, the majority of them have checked us out online before they step in the door. And so that means that you actually have the opportunity to start like shaping culture and shaping expectation and shaping like, what people can even be expecting about what they're stepping into online before they even get into the room. This is crazy, okay? There was a Canadian survey done in 2022, found that 99% of young people in Canada between the ages of 15 to 24 are on the internet. Well, that's like, duh, of course. Like, that shouldn't surprise any of us. But 91% of people in Canada aged between 15 to 24 are on social media platforms. AKA, the vast majority of the people in your community that you want to reach are on social media. So it's like, just think about all of the sessions that we've had over the last 2 days. Pastor Matt Tapley on Monday night. I'm forgetting the gentleman's name who preached last night. Pastor Samuel last night and yesterday morning. Pastor Charlie this morning. Reach. That's the theme this year. Okay, so explain to me how the mandate is so clear, and yet then in youth ministry, we can have a limiting mindset about not wanting to get into taking advantage of the most, it's such an easy vehicle to use to reach people in our communities. Now, I do want to share this. This is a quote that I heard from Pastor Jude Fuquay Sr. one time, and it applies to a lot of different things that we can do when it comes to strategy in ministry. And I think it's a super important caveat for us to just kind of think about off the bat before we get into any practicals around social media. He said this. He said, what God will bless as a supplement, he will curse as a substitute. And so I really, as we talk about the importance of social media, the opportunity that social media gives us, I really want us to keep that principle in our mind. What God may bless as a supplement, something that comes alongside, let's say, for our context, like present-centered churches. Churches that are going after the glory of God, trying to build churches that contend for revival in our regions. Like, that's the goal. We want to preach the gospel. We want to reach our cities. We want to not compromise on the word of God. Like that's the substance that we're after, right? If we have social media coming alongside as a supplement to help push forward that vision, I think God can bless it. Absolutely. That's what I've seen in our context. But if we adopt a posture where all of a sudden we become like maybe out of selfish ambition or out of pride or out of a desire to be noticed by people or to try to be the ministry in our community that's really awesome and cool and everybody follows online and we're better than the ministry down the street. If that's our purpose and if that's our mindset and our heart's posture, God's not going to be able to bless that. So we got to make sure that our priorities are straight, right? Social media is not a substitute for the substantive things we're called to as a ministry. However, if we are focused on the right priorities and we're able to build a team that can really have the right culture and the right mindset and even the right theological framework for how to think about social media, I think God can bless it. Let me just give you one story from my own ministry experience that maybe gives you a little glimpse of just like the power and the possibilities of social media. Now, again, another caveat, right? I think it's 1 Corinthians 3, verse 3 to 5. Paul talks about, one watered, one planted, but God gave the increase. So in this, I'm not saying that social media is like the reason that we grew. Obviously, God grew it, but he used a vehicle. I took over our young adults ministry almost 3 years ago reluctantly. I didn't want to do young adults. They hired me as the youth pastor, and youth ministry was like my baby. Like that's what I got into it for. Like I love the youth ministry. And we just could not figure out young adults ministry. There's a lot of reasons that went into that. The biggest reason is that we basically, so my youth pastor, he, great guy. We've got a great relationship with him to this day, has a church in our city, but he had this really successful campus ministry in Halifax for like 10 years called University Church. There's like hundreds of people coming to it. And that was kind of like our young adults thing from like 05 to 2015. And it was awesome. Kind of became like a natural hub in the city where lots of young adults from different churches and different regions would come and have community. And so as God was kind of leading him and doing different things in his life, he stepped down from staff in 2015. And a couple years later, he plants a church. And just because of the nature of that ministry and the people that were on his team, a huge swath of the young adults, a part of our church at that time, planted with him in the city. And so when I stepped onto the team in 2018 as a youth pastor, young adults was a wasteland. It was tumbleweed all around. Like we had a couple faithful few, a couple remnants that kind of were sticking around. But for the most part, what ended up happening was it was like, we're not really in a position where we're even able to do young adults right now because they all left to plant a church, And so we didn't even really do anything for the first 4 years. But of course, this is how it works in church, right? You pour into one generation and they all get older. And then 5 years later, you wake up and you have a bunch of young adults again in your church. And so Pastor Bruce, who mentored me for the 3 years while I was in Bible college, and then 4 years after that, as I was getting into my first couple years of youth ministry, 7 years pass after all of this wasteland. And we wake up one day and it's like, oh, there's young adults at our church again. What are we going to do? And we tried so many different things that failed. Like literally young adults was like just one failed experiment after another. And there's a lot of reasons that we weren't able to find traction. But at the end of the day, it got to this point where I was like, okay, somebody needs to just step up to the plate and take ownership of this. And I really don't want to. I mean, literally, I let like 6 months go by where I kind of just showed up and watched and everybody was floundering and a couple dumpster fires after another. Finally, I just got to the point where I'm like, God, I don't want to do this, but I love your church and I see a need. And so I'm gonna try. And so I take over the young adults ministry, and really it wasn't a takeover. There was nothing. It was just one failed experiment after another. So we launched, I think in September 2022, and it was like a 15-person Bible study basically. And I just said to the team, I said, okay, I think we had like 3 volunteers at the time. I said, okay, we just need to be consistent. We just need to start meeting. We decided that we would do a bi-weekly rhythm where we meet on the first and third Thursday of every month. Okay, we're just going to, no matter what happens, on the first and third Thursday of the month for the next couple of years, we just have to cement our credibility within the city. We are a young adults ministry. And over time, I was able to build a team, a social media team, and I really believe with all my heart that is one of the vehicles that God has blessed to grow our ministry. We had our launch. So 3 years has passed since I took over, and we had a 15-person Bible study. We had 115 people out to our young adults night like 2 weeks ago, and we're about to have our next one. And every single person, like, because every week we show up and there's new people, and we're like, where are these people coming from? I ask the same question every time, like, how did you hear about us?
And they all say the exact same thing. I'm a student that moved here from Manitoba, from British Columbia, from Ontario. I looked up online, young adults group, church, and you guys were the only thing that came up. And so we're experiencing growth in our ministry because we've actually been faithful to steward this tool that we have at our fingertips. So, by God's grace, I hope that we continue to grow. We're going to continue to make sure that it's not the main thing. It's a supplement that serves the substantive purpose that we're going after. But there's a lot of power in it. And so I was talking to somebody, I don't know if he's here, but somebody was kind of sharing with me like, yeah, but our church is a rural community and the kids in our church, they're either homeschooled or they grew up on homesteads and like their families don't want to communicate through social media. And I'm like, that's fine. In many ways, social media is about so much more than the people who are even in your church. So even if you have a context where you feel like the young people in your church aren't even into social media, like get on social media for the sake of the people in your community who are on social media, who are jumping in. So I just have kind of two main movements that I want to focus on. First is a theological framework, and then second is just practical tips that I've learned in the last 8 years as I've kind of been just jumping into it, okay? So here's the theological framework that I give my social media team that we've built in youth, young adults. We're now having some of our just awesome social media people transfer to like our main church social media team because it's kind of been hurting over the last couple of years. I love giving theological framework to my volunteers because it's like whether you're showing up to set up chairs or pipe and drape or whatever, I don't want my volunteers to be in a place where they reduce the thing they're doing to just obscurity and insignificance. I want to give them like scriptural anchors that help them see there's spiritual significance in what I'm doing. And so these are some of the scriptural anchors or theological frameworks that I'm repeating on a regular basis to our social media team to make sure they understand like you're not just like a creative that's doing something fun. Like there's actually some weight spiritually to what you're doing. So the first one is social media as storytelling and evangelism. Social media as storytelling and evangelism. So the way that I frame it for our team is you're not just taking pictures, you're not just taking videos, you're not just crafting posts. You are being gifted with a ministry where you are able to tell the story of what God is doing in our church in real time. That's that's going to shift your perspective. I love one of our youth and young adult social media team members was doing Instagram stories at our conference that we hosted this past weekend, and the comment that they made to one of our pastors on staff was, yeah, as we're capturing these Instagram stories, like I'm just really praying that the Spirit would just anoint them, and that as people are watching them at home, there would just be something that leaps up within them where they see the story of what God is doing in the room, and they all of a sudden feel this invitation to come and be a part. And I'm like, boom, that's what I want in my social media team. I don't want just great creatives, though they are great creatives. I want them to have that theological framework that I'm a part of something important. I'm carrying like a weighty spiritual calling. And so social media as storytelling and evangelism. Here's another one. Social media as real ministry, not just something that points to real ministry. Okay, I think that this is like a paradigm shift that a lot of us need to make, because I haven't looked at any of your guys' social media pages, so I'm not here to critique you, but a lot of us are still stuck in the graphic heavy era where every single post on our page is a graphic promoting where the real ministry is about to take place. But I just want to say social media has the potential, if you look at it the right way, to be a real ministry that blesses people in your church who are part of it, right? Because number one, it's a way that people can use their gifts. So in just the same way that the worship team is a vehicle for real ministry, because it's a space where musicians are getting to use their gifts, or whatever other, like a social media team is a real ministry where people come and they get to use their gifts as a sacrifice, as an offering unto the Lord, right? And so we need to kind of adopt that mentality, that paradigm, that it's a form of real ministry. It's not just a bulletin board that points people in our community to the place where the real ministry takes place. This is a way that people in our communities can actually hear the gospel and hear about local churches that are proclaiming the gospel. This is a way that we can help people in our communities connect into the life of our church. It's real ministry. It's not just a thing that points to real ministry. This is a vehicle we can use to actually prompt people in our congregations to practice faith, right? You know, there's all kinds of different types of posts you can curate that actually prompt people to begin pausing in the moment they see your post to pray in a moment, or to read scripture in a moment, or to fill in the blank in the moment, okay? So that's a second theological framework. And then lastly, social media as expressing creativity, which is a reflection of our Creator, right? There's something deeply theological, something deeply spiritual that's happening when we create content. We're actually acting as image bearers of God, because our God is the creator and he made us to reflect his image. And so when we're releasing young people to create content for the local church, we're actually releasing them to reflect one of the core attributes of our God. Okay, let's jump into the practical stuff. And I've got like 6 just practical tips. And honestly, depending on what the experience is like in the room, I'm sure there's people in the room who can probably like raise their hand and add 1 or 2 more on top of what I'm going to say. But here's the biggest thing that I would challenge you with. I think this is going to help take the pressure off if you feel like you're not the social media guy or the social media girl. Okay, you don't have to be the social media guy or the social media girl, but I would say this: you've got to adopt a mindset where you recognize in youth ministry and young adult ministry, it's important enough for you to build a team around it. And so you don't have to be the one on Canva or Photoshop designing the posts. You don't have to be the one behind the camera, behind the video, capturing all of the content. But it's important enough that you should have a conviction as a youth or young adults pastor. I'm going to build a team, a content creating team, a social media team to make this happen. Here's the deal. Based on the age group and the demographic that we're serving nowadays, you don't have to be the guru, because all of your students probably are already gurus in this world. They are digital natives and they have been growing up. They've been swimming within this TikTok, IG saturated world. And like, there's things that they probably know about social media that are intuitive. They may not even be able to articulate it, but it's just going to come more naturally to them. So I would say, even if you're a youth pastor or young adults pastor, definitely we want to have like seasoned people who are able to steer and guide and pastor within this. We're going to get into some of those like guardrails that we can put in place to make sure things don't get carried away. But I would say one of the best opportunities to empower young people nowadays is to invite youth in your church to join content creating teams. Man, they love it. Do you know that like the number one thing that like Generation Alpha and Generation Z say they want to be when they grow up now is influencers? Which, I mean, that comes with a whole host of issues that we're going to need to pastor people through. But yeah, Lord help us, man. We just need fresh grace for these students. But that being said, we could just kind of let them go be content creators in the world and build their own YouTube channels and whatever. And that's whatever, you know. But what if we could create a space in the church where they could channel this passion that God's giving them within this cultural moment to take their iPhones, to take their cameras, to take their video editing software and actually use it for the good of the church, for the glory of God? And so build a team, right? Don't put pressure on yourself to be the guru. Empower your youth and your youth leaders to do it. Most of them are digital natives and are already social media gurus. So I just say learn to rely on the wisdom of your own youth and your own youth leaders, right? Here's number 2, okay? As you're building a team, you need to set clear expectations from the start. I learned this backwards, which I don't recommend, okay? Set clear expectations from the start. Here's a couple things that I would encourage you to take time if you want to build a social media team in your youth ministry or young adults ministry. Take some time to develop what I just call a social media philosophy and strategy document, okay? Where you take the time to actually think through some of these things. My social media philosophy strategy document includes some of the theological framework I just explained to you. That's really the first thing that I go through, because I want them to have a vision for the why behind what they're doing. And then we get into a lot of practical stuff around, maybe like posting schedule, maybe, and let me give a couple caveats, because you can kind of negotiate how involved you want to be in this. I like social media, so I'm involved in the team. I'm not involved in creating content and posting content, but I'm involved as a creative in setting creative direction for the team. Does that make sense? So for me, I really wanted to, you know, give expectations to my team around like the visual identity of our pages. You might not get that deep into it. And I would say don't stress yourself out about getting super deep into like brand guides and visual identities. You can learn all of that as you go, right? Don't get stressed out about that. But for me, I actually wanted to share like 3 or 4 pages that I really loved, give them some examples of what some other youth ministries or young adults ministries that are doing really good. Hey, check out some of these posts. I'd love it if we could try to make our page kind of not emulate or copy, but just kind of get as a source of inspiration. Because I found this, if you don't show them an example of what you like, or like it's you're going to have a lot of like important conversations that you're going to have following up with that. Okay, here's something really important. Okay, set a post approval expectation if you're going to build a team. Okay, you need to have a like group chat or some type of system in place where all of your social media team members understand nothing goes on to the page that represents our church unless I have seen it and read it and approved it. Set that expectation from the ground, because you know, and it's not even just like controversial stuff. Sometimes like, you know, just with generational stuff in our churches, like there's stuff that we get in like youth culture online that like other generations they just don't get, and sometimes like you just need to make sure that you process stuff through a couple layers of accountability before you just throw it online. Okay, so I would say make sure that you have post approval. Here's something that saved me. I don't know how much experience you guys have working with creatives. Some of you might consider yourself creatives, but I've just found that creatives can be a pain to work with because, you know, I mean, we won't get into all of the. So I just told our creatives off the bat, like, listen, I need you to expect off the bat, I'm going to be incredibly direct with you about my opinion about the stuff that you're making. And I need you to make a decision off the get-go that you're not going to be offended if you create something that I say, hey, that doesn't really represent the kind of thing that I want on our thing. Like, and so, but I had that conversation up front, and you know what it led to by having that conversation up front? Now we have this really healthy give and take in our social media team where they're not like offended if I get back to them and say, hey, I need you to redesign that, or hey, that doesn't really match the thing that we're going for. Does that make sense? So I just say tell them up front, like, expect me to be direct with you. And then when they send you something that looks awful, don't like tell them. I mean, you don't say that it looks awful, but you know, just say, hey, listen, like, you know, find a way to make it sound nice, you know. Like one time we had our student, one of our team members send something, and it looked like the type of thing that really belonged on the kids ministry. Like the vibe of the design, it looked more like a kids ministry thing, not really like a. I just said, hey, that looks like it would be great post for our kids ministry, but not the kind of thing that we want in our youth ministry. So let's try again, and it's fine. It's great. I mean, you know, have wisdom as you select people to be on the team, and really just stay in the loop. I would say, like, even if you're not going to be the one who is like doing the work, I would say it is important for you to at least stay in the loop with what is happening in the context of the team, just so that you have a pulse on what's happening. So that's all kind of like jot notes from clear expectations from the start. Okay, so try to put together a philosophy or strategy doc that kind of outlines your vision for what your social media is going to look like. You can talk about posting schedule, creative boundaries, and this is going to be stuff you negotiate for yourself, like and then, yeah, post approval, direct feedback. Number 3, I already kind of talked about this, but I just say take some time to do a bit of research on other churches that are doing social media really well, that inspire you, and have like posts that, again, it's not that we're copying people, but just gives you like something substantive to point your team to, like, hey, I love what this group is doing. 2 of my favorites are Elevation Rhythm. There's another group called Crave Generation, who Brady Shear recommended a couple months ago on his thing. By the way, if you don't follow Brady Shear, I really would encourage you to follow him and watch a lot of his stuff, because most of the stuff that I've learned over the years has come from following his YouTube channel. Number 4, I wrote down learn as you go, and this is really quick. So yeah, I'd encourage you, go subscribe to Brady Shear's YouTube channel right now. He has an entire business and YouTube channel really dedicated to helping churches navigate this world. And so he's going to be the guy who's studying the changes in the algorithms. He's going to be the guy who helps you get really nitty gritty into like, okay, there's a new update on the Instagram algorithm. What do we think about it? Like, I always felt like I was late to the party. Just when I felt like I was getting good at designing graphics, the algorithm changed and didn't care about graphics anymore. And I was like, crap, now we don't really post graphics anymore. Anyway, that's a great shift that I would challenge you guys to make if you have any leverage in your church. If you go onto your church's social media page and it's just graphic after graphic after graphic after graphic, find a way to gently nudge your team to the place where I'm not saying you don't use graphics, but graphics should be fewer and further between on your page. Like reserve, in my opinion on graphics is it's like use a graphic for big events that you need to communicate information on, and for everything else do your best to have real pictures of people, reels and videos of people, because really it's the reels and it's the pictures of people that are going to help your page grow. Okay, number five. This is something that I've learned working with different personality types on my team. I just wrote it down like this: manage the tension. There's a couple tensions that you're going to have to manage. They're not necessarily problems that you got to solve. They're just tensions that you need to manage. Here's one tension that you need to manage. There's a tension between excellence and empowering people. Okay. So I know that I was like, some of what I was just saying before made it sound like I was just like really like just always direct and and that looks not great and you need to change it. Honestly, though, that's not really the vibe. I do give direct feedback from time to time if someone makes something that looks really bad. But a lot of the times, I'm living in a tension between, okay, we want to have excellence on our social media pages, but at the same time, I'm trying to build a team where youth leaders and young people are empowered to create and contribute. And so if I go all the way to like the excellence extreme where I'm so fired up about like all the specific fonts and all the specific stuff that nobody on my team has the air to breathe and room to grow and room to try and to fail, the culture of my social media team is going to suck pretty soon. So, and some people are going to have, like, depending on your resources, some people are going to have different, like, I guess, capacities for how they manage this. My social media team is using iPhones and apps, right? So I lean a little bit more onto the empowerment side, where I tell our young guy who I've been mentoring right now, I think he might take the youth ministry in a couple years. We'll see. I tell him a lot of the time, like, listen, unless it's like really, 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 really bad, if it's just stylistic preference for you, I would let it get posted. That's how I do it, because I want to have a culture where the kids feel excited and empowered, and so you could go onto our young adults page, for example. It's Rock Young Adults HFX. I hate our young adults page. stylistically, you should check it out. Like, honestly, like it's not that great. It's not bad. Trust me. There's a lot of pages out there that are like real bad. Like, it's not bad, but I have stylistic preferences that I prefer. And if I was the one running the team, I would probably make different creative decisions. But here's the point: if I get so caught up in my stylistic preference as a person overseeing a social media team that there's no room for my team members to contribute, like we're not gonna get stuff done, right? Here's another tension, right? There's the tension of creativity and practicality. This is one thing that I'm always trying to remind one of our creatives on the team. He's like a perfectionist, and he could just spend hours and hours and hours teeing up the perfectly curated post and then start getting into his head about all the things that are wrong and end up scrapping it. And I'm thinking, like, buddy, you got to remember that we're serving a local church who sometimes just needs the information, right? And so it's like, yes, we want to have space for creativity, but there comes a point, especially in the flow of the life of a church, where it's like the event is coming up. We need to make sure that we have X amount of weeks beforehand so that it has time to live in Instagram. So at some point, you just got to post. So I'm always trying to remind my team members, like, okay, yes, we're going to be creative. We're going to try to try some new things. But remember, we're serving a local community that is relying on some of this stuff for practical information, okay? I think that is. Oh yeah, the last thing. These are just a couple quick things, and then maybe we can have a conversation about some of the stuff you guys have learned. Um, just a couple things to keep in mind with posting goals. I've already talked about a couple of these things, but right now, and maybe we don't even have a TikTok, so don't even get me started on TikTok, right? Some of you maybe are killing it on TikTok. I don't have the time. I don't have the time. I'm praying that the Lord raises up some seventh grader to help us, you know. Right now, for us, the main vehicle that we use for our youth and young adult pages is Instagram, and it works for us. But these are the things that I've learned, at least on Instagram. When it comes to post, I would say you really want to have people-centric posts. So do your best to be capturing pictures of people, real people. I mean, it's called social media for a reason. Anytime we post graphics on our pages versus pictures of real people, it's amazing to compare the engagement level. The engagement level is always way up on posts that include the real people of your church. Now, we could get into like a whole thing. Different churches are going to have different, what would you call, like policies on how you go about posting people. So yeah, maybe that's a conversation we can get into another time. I'm more of a ask for forgiveness than permission type person myself, but that's probably I wouldn't run with that and adopt that as a best practice in your ministry. Okay, I'm just being honest. Okay, focus on making reels. Reels is going to be something right now on Instagram that just drives engagement and growth on your page. So I would say, really try to make that a priority. I already mentioned this, but try to reserve graphics for like your big events. Okay, so for us in our rhythm, we do like one big youth event outside of our regular weekly youth rhythm a quarter, basically. And so we try our best to save like graphics for like those type of big things that involve details like dates and times and not graphics, cost and registration links, that type of stuff. Okay, I try my best to save it for that. Now you could go look at our youth page and see that we're hypocrites because I'm pretty sure my intern just posted a "See you tomorrow" graphic like 3 days ago. So I'm like, we're not all perfect at it, but I think that's a good goal. And then this is one thing that I learned from Brady Shearer, and it is a I would say focus on growing into this. Maybe don't set this as like your goal like right off the bat, but he talks about something called the 1 in 5 rule. And basically it's this idea that you want to do your best to make sure that no more than 20% of your posts on a maybe a monthly basis or a weekly basis, depending on how much you post, are promotional in nature. So he advocates for like this counterintuitive approach to promoting your church, where it's like a lot of us, we think like the classic bulletin board mindset, where it's like every post is like, "Hey, youth is coming up. See you there," or "Prayer night is coming up. We'll see you there at 6:15," or like. And that's what our like Instagram pages become. Like every post is just like, "See you there, see you there, see you there," with like a poorly made graphic, right? He talks about like this counterintuitive approach to promoting your ministries, where it's more about, and I think this is like a huge opportunity within the context of like youth and young adults ministry, creating like a fun, joy-filled culture on your page where you're maybe you're doing a recent trend, or you're sharing memes, or you're doing something that kind of is in step with some of the stuff that the kids and the youth relate to. And it actually creates sort of like a FOMO mentality in people who are following your page. We're like, man, who are these young people who are having so much fun laughing and doing this? One of my youth, they did a post a couple of weeks ago at youth camp. Did you know the trend that happened where it was like, what was it like? "Just give me my money," or whatever. Yeah, our social media team played a trick on me, and they did that to me, and they posted it online, and it was like the engagement on that post was amazing. Like it was shared by a ton of our students, right? They're all laughing at the way that the youth leaders and the youth like got their youth pastor, right? But it's like that's like a great example. Like try to actually have more posts that are like showcasing the fun community life of your youth ministry. And even though you're still going to have posts that promote youth night is coming up, see you at 7 or whatever, like there's going to be like like a believability, like a buy-in that actually begins to kind of generate around your page where students are going to see it and they're going to want to come and be a part. That's all I got. Anybody else have any tips that they've learned over the last couple of years?